All right. So, as stated, my name is Wyatt Roersma. I work for a training-focused company called SimSpace, and today I'll be giving a talk on a plugin I wrote for my Analyst Unknown Cyber Range uh, project, which is just basically a microservices web framework. I'll get a little bit into that. Click on the right screen here. All right, we'll load up here. So, who am I? If you don't know who I am, my name is Wyatt Roersma. As stated, you can follow me on Twitter. I also stream on Twitch, sometimes development, sometimes gaming stuff, just depends on the mood. My background is mostly I've worked on Volatility, the open source project, as well as Cuckoo, an open source project called MMBot. And the latest one that's originally mine is the AUCR project, which is the Analyst Unknown Cyber Range, which is meant to be a microservices framework to make a lot of different things easier. And I'll kind of dive into what it is, so we can kind of talk about the YARA plugin that I wrote for making YARA testing easy, and something that you can use to share with many people. Because one of the problems I ran into when I was working and writing YARA rules in my day job every day is that I had over 50 gigs of malware and samples that I would run my rules against, but my coworker wouldn't have that same sample set, and it was very hard for us to share those rules and the sample sets that we were testing against in a efficient manner. So the outline of the talk will be like, why did I do this? What the platform is, who would use it, kind of some architectural things so you can understand the backend stuff and how it scales. And then I'll dive more into the YARA plugin, what it can provide for you. And then if there's enough time, we'll cover the file management plugin, which does permissions and groups and stuff. And then there will be a small demo at the end, depending on time. So what it is, I kind of talked about it. It is a microservices web framework. It's written in Python 3. It heavily relies on Flask. It's more of a modern design using things like object storage for storing like things like files or anything like that, and then using message queuing to kick off the ability to have 100 containers or a single container doing processes like running YARA rules, for example. And it's very modular, and you can drop in plugins for it very easily. And so why did I make this platform? Well, there's a number of different reasons. I was sick of portal hell, going between many different projects of Cuckoo, VirusTotal, where we store our projects in a Git repository for YARA rules, things of that nature. CTFs I was running where I wanted people to be able to play in events and not have to sign up for a new platform every time that I was going to run a new event and put up a new web service every time I wanted to run a new capture the flag. And I'll get more into that in just a little bit, because I also made the most recent challenge I have on my site is actually very YARA focused. You pretty much, to get 80% of the flags, you have to use YARA to pivot in the web platform to find other samples that are in the web platform. Anyways, so one thing I want to get out of the way is I really do love open source software, but there was a lot of problems out there, and this is kind of what generated the need for this. So if you're familiar with Cuckoo, it's kind of a dumpster fire. Even though I have worked on it and contributed to the project, it's really bloated. And say you're processing 1 million samples a day like VirusTotal, there's no way you're ever going to be able to reprocess all those samples to rerun your YARA rules, which is how Cuckoo has it built in. Not only do you have to reprocess the samples to rerun your YARA rules, but you have to have them built into the code base, which is crazy, to redeploy code base every time a YARA rule is updated or changed. And then it's infeasible to rerun that many samples if you have, say, 1 million samples you're ingesting a day. There's not enough time, right, to reprocess 30 million samples if there's a 15 to 30 second time that this sample has to run on a VM. And that's kind of pointless if you're just testing YARA rules, for example. So this is the project. You can go to it on GitHub, and it's just a basic way to get started and whatnot. And then one of the core focuses I wanted to also focus on with the project was to get code coverage. So right now I'm at 82%. I would like it to be about 3% higher, just because it will better track changes and things that will break and other types of testing to ensure lack of bugs and stuff don't become a huge issue for the project, which happens in many other projects where if they don't have testing, they make a change and it breaks 5 things. anyways, just to kind of go off that, the reason for that goal is that's right around where Google released in 2014 that most of their projects are right around 85% code coverage for Python related projects. So that's kind of where that number comes from. And here it's 84.2 or whatever. And that's why I felt like that was important to call out, especially in the security community. We don't see enough projects with enough testing, especially when it comes to security related projects. And then this is when I referenced those CTFs I've made. I've been making CTFs for a long time, and I was really sick of making many different portals to run, a single event essentially. So to kind of get more into the neat stuff, this is like a basic web portal with the public site, which you can go to and sign up for right now. And if you want to play the Acre 2020 challenge, you can. It is, like I said, it's YARA focused. What it will do is it gives you an initial sample. You can download it and then run strings or whatever, and you can even run the YARA rules in the web platform. And I will show that in an example in just a second. So what are some of the features with the platform itself outside of the YARA plugin and whatnot? So the basic platform itself has user and group permissions. It handles API OAuth token generation. It also supports two-factor authentication, password resets via email links, so you can get a link that expires in I think it's 6 minutes or something, pretty short, which is customizable. But some basic stuff we don't see in a lot of security projects, like a miss for all these others. And then it also has LDAP support or using the local database for authentication. And it also has navbar rendering for any plugin that wants to utilize the navigation bar and permissions. That's available as well. The database support, it supports all of the most popular MySQL, SQLite, Postgres. And then if you would like full stack search to be available, you're going to need Elasticsearch enabled. It's not required. And you can, all this is open source, by the way. So if anyone wants to set up and run their own environment, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Otherwise, you can use the public platform that I have, and you could test out stuff on there. It also has multi-language support because of message queuing. So if you don't want to write, a plugin in Python, you don't have to. For the web interface components specifically, you do. But for a processing pipeline like YARA, you could just kick it to a message queue and have any code pick it up and process it as long as it has access to, say, the object storage or something of that nature. All right, so. All right. Another basic features: email registration via whitelist or whitelisting, whatever. So you can say here are the email addresses that can be enabled. That can sign up for it if you want that feature. There's error reporting. Right now, it uses Kubernetes. It mainly runs on, and then it also has maybe mobile page rendering, sort of, and some other stuff like policy page rendering. So if you have a specific policy that people in a user agreement needed to sign or see, you can include that and it will show it to them. Not to talk too much about the stack, but like I said, this is kind of an example of you can use Swift Stack, or in my case, I'm using Minnow right now, or S3, or any of those other backends for object storage, or saying your actual files that you upload will be stored in there. Which Minnow has a lot of good reasons to use that, because that can do compression in the back end, and then it allows you to scale your YARA processing. So say you have 100 gigs in the repository, and then you can have as many containers pulling and scanning those files that you need. And then obviously RabbitMQ to make everything a little bit more operable between many different programming languages. As I mentioned earlier, the navbar renders based on groups, has auto importing. So if you include a plugin, it will build it to be included in the web interface. Optional ES indexing, as I mentioned. Everything has an API. Even the YARA plugin, you can pull your YARA rules, you can push your YARA rules, you can get your YARA rule results, all via the API, which is OAuth 2 token generation. So you don't have to use your password, which is a crazy concept in security tools in architecture. Apparently, that they would have a real API to use, because Cuckoo doesn't. It doesn't even intend for you to have that exposed to the web, because there's a number of cross-site scripting vulnerabilities and so on in there. Unlike my platform, which as far as I know, doesn't currently have any huge vulnerabilities. I've scanned it and done some other basic stuff. So it seems to be, trying to approach things in a little bit more of a modular and secure design. It also has page templates. So if you're a Python developer and you don't want to touch HTML, which I hate, by the way, and which is weird because I wrote a web framework. It makes no sense, I know. But if you don't want to write HTML, you don't have to. You can just say, hey, return this Python dictionary. And then there's a page template that will load it for you. Anyways, real quick to talk about the file management, because this is required for the YARA plugin. The UNUM plugin, basically, it's a plugin that does exactly that. It allows you to upload and submit files to the platform, with soon coming like hash submitting, so you can submit like a virus total hash or something like that, and it will reach out to other services and try to grab a hash from there and then put it into its database. Also, it has group permissions, so you can, when you upload it, you give it access to a group, and only people in that group can access it, and so on and so forth. Also has an API for file uploads and such. And I do have a Python example of like how things are indexed. So if you're writing a plugin and you want anything to be indexed in Elasticsearch, if you're familiar with SQL Alchemy, you just need to have the searchable ID description, and the searchable tag makes whatever you want to be included in Elasticsearch as full text search enabled data. So it's pretty easy as a developer to include that. If you're not familiar with this code, don't worry about it. It's more so people that have ever used SQL Alchemy, that object for that type of database structure. But I was just trying to show how easy it is to say, hey, I want this data to be searchable. Another one is the navbar rendering. So for anything that you see, you can include your plugin, and then if you want, the links and stuff for the navbar, it's just a YAML file you include in your the plugin's default directory, and then it picks that up and says, the users group can see this. It uses material design icons to render. So you can say, I want the group icon, or in this case, the people icon, or whatever it is, or the face icon, I should say. It's just some basic stuff. And it's not a great UI, I'll give it that. It's pretty ugly, but it does work. This is an example of the UNUM where it has, all these files that we uploaded, and you can go in there and click on them. You can upload them with this upload new file, and then you can see like the hash part is there. I just haven't finished the ability for you to say, hey, here's my virus tool API key, get it if this file isn't found in your database or whatever. And then you can do a classification like known bad. And this is what it looks like when a file is uploaded. It also allows you to download the file directly, whether it's via the API or the web interface. And if you do it through the web interface, by default right now, it downloads it as a zip file with the password of infected. For obvious reasons, so you don't set off AV engines if you're trying to, grab a known bad file. And then there is the full text search, which is pretty ugly, but it does work. You can say, hey, I want to look at all these files that I had my API, a little application upload, because I had like a few thousand samples I wanted to upload, and they all kind of had the same names and stuff. So I was like, here's a bunch of known good files. And this is just an example of the search at the top doing full text search against all the files that were uploaded. And this is an example of the Python, if you're to like have your own local version, or if you want to use the public site that I have, you'd have to reach out to me and get API enabled, because it's not enabled for users by default. You have to be in a special group. But basically, this is just a simple Python script I'm providing for anyone that wants to see like how easy it is to upload a file. In this case, I just had the, some mal file. Obviously, there's more secure ways to store your secrets, like in something like Vault, and I would highly recommend that. This is again just for how easy it is to upload something to the UNUM file management plugin. And this is the result you would get back right now. It only returns back the MD5 hash when you upload a file, and then the ID of the file that was uploaded. I do intend to move to SHA-256 at some point as like a verification system. Right now, I'm not super worried about hash collisions, just because, the whole point is to test files. So like at worst, what would happen is it would say the file's already been uploaded, and then like throw its hands up and say, I'm not uploading it again. That's the worst thing you could cause with, having a collision happen. So it's just not super high concern right now, but it is definitely on a priority list. I have this included because I've given this talk a few times. I think everybody here kind of has a basic understanding of YARA and what it does. So we'll kind of dive right into the YARA plugin itself. So this plugin, the YARA plugin, is meant to do rule management. You can upload files, you can save files through the web UI. It also allows you to use the Cuckoo plugin, and it scans all the files that have been run through Cuckoo, which is a lot nicer than having to rerun the report just to see, hey, I have this file uploaded. I want to see if this rule matches against it, and I don't really need the sandbox to reprocess my sample. Much more like VirusTotal and how it works. And then obviously, if you'd like to check out YARA, there's a link to it. And this is an example of the default interface. Much like the other interface, you can see they're using the same template because I'm not creative. You can upload your rule, you can save your rule through the web UI, and it shows you like how many hits it has, what the list name is, who's the author. This is the basic editing interface, which again is a very basic UI, but you can see, hey, I want to edit my rules here. And as soon as you save it, it automatically updates it and runs it against all the samples in the database. Right now, it doesn't currently actually run against newly uploaded samples, which is a feature I'm working on. I just need to optimize that a little bit better so it's a little bit more efficient. But and then you can see like the current matches, and this does update. So if you update your rule and there's new samples or samples don't match anymore, it bases it on the runtime and the modification time of the rule. But it still actually has all those matches. So if you have access to Elasticsearch, you can see that those results, still the old results. Otherwise, you can see them because the platform will send you notifications based on the rule. So when you save it, it runs it in the background. When it's done, it sends you the results. It says, here's the known, it's a known bad file. It shows you the string matches, offset, location, which string it was. Because this can be very useful for a YARA or a developer that's writing a lot of YARA rules and has this huge sample set that maybe is too hard to have on a laptop, especially if you get above 500 gigs of a sample repository. It's very infeasible for each employee to have that on their laptop and then also be able to share them with each other and not have to constantly be going and pulling and pushing samples and whatnot. This is a much more convenient way. And then this is also full text searchable, which you'll notice at the top is actually how these results are being found. Not only did this send me notifications of what happened, it also is full text searchable, so I can go back and see, hey, I was looking for this API call that was being used in the sample, and I want to see which samples were using that and what the actual results were. And like I said, you can see the current matches in the current matches page. I also want to add another tab that shows you a little bit more in depth on like the match information that shows you what matched, where it matched, what string it was, and some more information about the rule, the state of the rule at the time it matched. So you could go back and historically see this version of this rule had this, and it detected against this sample, and then this new version doesn't have that string in it, and it's no longer detecting against the sample to kind of help you in that process of building more efficient and better YARA rules. And then there's a new plugin that's going to be coming out soon as my old employer finally releases it. It's a Halo plugin. So what it is on upload, it would generate a signature for any picture that's included in a document. So say you have a mail document that you're analyzing and you want to see if the picture, you have a signature for it, you can upload it and it'll automatically generate a signature and check your current rules to see if there is already a signature generated for that picture. And then if not, it will generate a new one, create a new rule and send you the hash or the actual information of the YARA rule and tell you which YARA rule it is so you can reference it in the web UI. I also at some point want to update this so it doesn't just create a new YARA rule every time. It just updates an existing YARA rule by adding a new value for this rule it generates. So this is something that's coming. It does work. It's something I've had fully functioning as a plugin for a long time, except I haven't had the rights to release it as open source because I've been waiting on my old employer to get to that. Anyways, there's some other plugins that can assist you, like MMBot. This is a plugin that it's a malicious macro bot. It shows you some basic stuff about, macro-enabled Word documents or Office documents, I should say. So you can see some basic information about it, which functions it's using, whether it thinks it's malicious or not. This was very helpful for me when writing YARA rules, just because it actually detects on a lot of stuff that AVs don't hit on, just because people are using very obscure function names and stuff, which is pretty obvious to any malware researcher. You're like, none of these are readable. It's not something you would commonly see by normal developers. Not that it doesn't ever happen. So sometimes this can still be pretty false positive, but it can definitely help and assist you in knowing, what the samples you're hitting on. Because as you can see, if I go back to here, you see the classification on the file that it's uploaded, and you can go in and change that. So if you have a bunch of files that are matching, you can see how good it is. I would like to have a dashboard at some point that shows you a little prettier graph and stuff of like your known bad versus known good and unknown classification that you're matching against, or any other custom classifications you've added. But anyways, we'll move on. So I kind of talked a little bit about some of the features I would like to have moving forward. The first one, and the most important one that I'm trying to work on right now, is volume, or not volume, I'm sorry, that's the wrong name, version control system support with Git. That's pretty obvious. When someone updates the rule, it would be pretty helpful for other people to be able to say, hey, that's a good update to the rule. It has a number, it's still very not false positive prone, stuff like that, but they can merge it in as a pull request or however you do it in your YARA rule process. But it would be essentially using something like, a Git backend to store the rules in, so you can programmatically use that rule set and other things without having to directly hit the API or anything. Another one is UI improvements. It's not pretty. I do intend to switch over from Markdown Lite to Markdown fully at some point and make those totally optional to whether you want to use one of those two frameworks and potentially other frameworks for the front end. Another very important one is the YARA syntax rule formatting. That's kind of obvious just because it'd be very nice to have like, hey, this is broken, this is bad, you're missing this thing, right? Something like basic spell check, so it tells me when my YARA rules are bad, because I forget often, even though I've written many YARA rules on all the things that I want to have in my YARA rule, or some basic formatting where I've left off a quote, or something very simple and my YARA rule is broken, and I save it and run it, and I'm like, it's mad. So that'd be really nice to have in the dashboard. A dashboard for string matches, so you can see the string matches, not in that ugly message UI view that the platform sends it to you in right now. It's not the best messaging view right now. Really, the best use of that is actually to hit the API, pull your message, and then process it, which is like totally outside of what people will be using it for. So I definitely want to have a dashboard along there that shows you the string matches, all that information in a much prettier and easier to use interface. However, I am the sole developer of all of these projects. So, all things come soon. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the Halo plugin that generates, rules for any picture in a document, which can be very useful for tracking mail.com campaigns, because they'll change out the macro, they'll change out all this stuff in the Word doc, but they'll use the same 10 different pictures for years. It's like they don't understand that you can also write detection for that, even if it's one of the newer doc formats. This still works. Just a quick plug for my employer. I work for a training company called SimSpace. We do simulation trainings and stuff. If you're interested in YARA classes, we offer those for anyone that's interested in a live range VM attached to going through a module and stuff like that. And yeah, so in conclusion, I hopefully, some people will find the YARA plugin for my platform to be useful. You can check out the beta right now. It's live. You can sign up for the CTF and play in it. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out in the Slack that's available for it. Dev, if anyone's interested in writing a plugin like, say, Halo, that when a sample is uploaded, it automatically scans it and tries to do some processing with it. You can hook into any processing pipeline, whether it be YARA, Unum, Cuckoo, anything. You can just listen to its what's being inserted into its message queue and have those same messages inserted into a custom plugins message queue for your processing, which is pretty cool. So if you're interested in any development like that, I have a YouTube video that goes through setting up a brand new Ubuntu VM to develop this in, and setting up the platform and starting to develop a plugin and writing a basic plugin from scratch. And you can build a local instance from the YARA plugin. Just follow the directions from the main site on how to import a plugin, and then and then, if you're interested in training for your company, let's talk for SimSpace-wise, because we do have some YARA training available and some other stuff, especially as I try to work some of these ideas back into that, where, I have a cases management plugin and stuff that allows me to run challenges. I think I might be, I don't remember exactly what time I started at. I might be a little close to the edge here, but.
We have plenty of questions, Wyatt. So.
Oh, cool.
If you're ready for questions.
how we get in touch with you for your training. You just reach out to Wyatt at simspace.com. Here, I can throw that in.
And then if we have a couple other questions. So in the YARA editor that we saw earlier, does that parse for errors itself or not?
It will send you a message if your formatting is broken. Oh, wow, I forgot that my cert expired today. Oh, crap, that's sad. I will fix that. But so right now the site's currently expired. But so for that, it will shoot you a message saying there's something wrong with the YARA rule. I don't know how verbose it is right now, and I want to say it's probably leaving a little bit to be desired. But I definitely would rather have some JavaScript take care of that on a nicer scale where it could show you without even having to save that there's something wrong with the YARA rule.
Next question. Do you have support for password protected documents or samples?
So if you upload a password protected, I do not. I should totally add that to, if you would like to make a feature request on Git, otherwise I can do it. But that's a great idea. I never really thought about that. So it doesn't currently, to answer your question.
Next question for the rule set running under the hood. How do you handle? Because I know this is one of the themes for today, which is efficiency and bogging things down. How do you handle a rule set that's bogging something down?
I actually don't have anything that says like, hey, this is taking up too much performance, just because there's really not a huge concern with that as the platform. I mean, really, that's going to be on the users and their platform and how much power they can give it. I mean, because it's using object storage, and you could have, say, 1,000 YARA processing containers, there wouldn't be a performance hit, right? There'd just be how much are you willing to pay for your YARA rules and how they're written. So, I guess hopefully I answers the question.
Yeah, and there's another one. Cuckoo compiles the YARA rules before running the sample. Does your plugin check the results of the Cuckoo? So the results that come back from Cuckoo?
So you can run against the results of Cuckoo. You would have to use a custom version of YARA because it doesn't support the latest Cuckoo report formatting. But I have that. I have a pull request open that I never finished, and I need to finish, that has backwards compatibility. But I need to get that into YARA, so that has that compatibility. So you could include the Cuckoo features in your YARA rule, and it would run against the Cuckoo reports it has. And what I'm saying is that you wouldn't have to rerun and compile YARA into Cuckoo to get the results you're looking for. It would rerun it as a new, it would just use the old report data against your new updated YARA rule. I don't actually compile any of the YARA rules into Cuckoo itself. I've completely removed the functionality away from Cuckoo because I want to make Cuckoo just do what it does, is process a sample in a VM and then nothing else. I don't want it to run IDS signatures. I don't want it to run anything. I want that all to be abstract from that layer. So I have a sandbox tool that runs samples in a sandbox, and then engines like YARA plugin that you run, manage, and show me the results of YARA rules and stuff.
So next question, and this one is just a meta question. I think we've had a lot of positive comments about the presentation you have. What software are you using to present?
So this is OBS Studio. It's open source and free. I use it for Twitch streaming because I do coding streams for gaming and stuff. So you can check that out. I think, yeah. So just search for OBS Studio on Google. There's actually a couple different versions of it, whether it's like Streamlabs or Elements or whatever. So there's a couple different versions of OBS out there that you can check out, that they're all open source.
So next question, can we integrate your platform with a SIM to check live signatures?
Right now, the only way you could integrate it is to submit samples. There is no easy way to be like, on the wire running the YARA rules for my platform. It's definitely a good idea though, and not something I've really considered all that much just because there are some issues. Something like Strelka is a good way to go about that. I don't know if I would actually directly do it with my stuff because I think the endpoints that need that it makes it a little challenging. So right now, currently not, but it's definitely something I want to work on.
All right. Next question. I noticed, this is for me. So I noticed that the searching for the image in malicious documents is a very sharp way to find them. And I noticed that the hex string that you're using was fairly short. So do you find using a hex string to zone in on an image is better, or using like the hash module to get the hash of the full image?
So there's reasons I wouldn't want to get the hash of the full image or any of that, just because it's included in the document and it makes a very hard way to detect that image inside of a document, performance-wise, right? Because you'd have to detect the entire thing. So what I do is I just went by, it includes enough information that it will, in my experience against millions and millions of samples, it won't false positive. It's enough of the image that it's unique. It includes some of the metadata characteristics because it just pulls like so many bytes from the start of the image that it gets like there's some, what's the metadata stuff that it has that's unique, like the CRC data and stuff that's included in there. So it's enough to be accurate and also not be super performance induced, like a huge performance issue. These are rules that can run on VirusTotal no problem without slowing it down. Okay. So I would stay with that because I think it's more efficient. Unless I'm shown otherwise. If you have a use case, let's talk about it. Shoot me up in an issue.
Cool. And then last question, I think. So you're very in the world of CTFs, and so what is your favorite CTF over the years?
None of them. I think they're all really poorly done. And I don't mean this, even mine. Mine are even a pathetic excuse for CTFs because I think they lack a lot of real world usability. They're all question driven, which drives me nuts. I'd rather give you a scenario, be like so-and-so forwarded email, much like my CTF tries to do, but it does it very poorly. The execution isn't quite there. But basically what I'm saying is that I want someone to give me a case and I want to build all the IOCs I can find on it and then get scored on that. And that's how mine actually works, is that it actually does go through and, it just allows you to submit the IOCs as part of your case notes, and then it will let you know with a notification that you've scored points. So you don't know how many IOCs there are. I do have started letting people know how many points total there are, but I don't want to let people know that there's 20 different files that you need to detect on, because you need to use YARA pivot to find them all. Or there's 3 domains related to this campaign that you need to alert on or block. So that's something I have a really big problem with CTFs, is because they're all question driven and they're a lot easier because of that nature. So I can't find any that are real world enough that make me use a case management system and make me actually better at my job. So that's my answer. And that also shits on mine. I think mine is a pathetic excuse of where I wish it was.
All right. Well, thank you, Wyatt. Appreciate it.